NYFF, and LIB Africa. And today our focus will be on media's role in enhancing accountability in governance. And our guest in the studio is Ubong Anetie. Good day. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Now, we are looking at media's role in enhancing accountability in governance. So, for you now, what do you feel is accountability in governance?
Yeah, it's very straightforward at the very least. It's the ability of government being very open to answer questions. They are managing our resources.
Okay.
That's government's readiness, to always at all times, be ready to answer questions to how, they are managing our resources. So that's simply accountability.
All right. Now, how can the media actually serve as a catalyst for empowering you to actively participate in holding the government accountable?
Of course, the media, first of all, is the fourth estate of the realm, and whenever we call the media by that phrase, everybody should rather sit up and take a listen for a second time.
Okay.
So what that means is that they have that ability to always influence how people take certain actions, how they react to them, what's really on the front burner, what's really important, what should we be talking about. So definitely on the youth front, they have that ability, the media has that ability to always pull the youth together and bring about discussions for the youth to think over and say, okay, so if these discussions are on the front burner, that means it should be given great importance. So if the media would be talking about government, the need for governments to be accountable, put that on the front burner, come up with programs that are youth focused on that regard, then definitely that would be a way of pulling the youths together, having that cohesiveness, for them to say, okay, that means this is our right, we can really talk about this, since the media is really projecting this. So that's a way the media can galvanize the youth, to always see importance on taking it up as a right, for them to demand accountability from government.
Now, looking at it historically, in what ways have the media played a role in promoting transparency and accountability in governance for the youth?
Yeah, definitely. We've had several issues that have been pushed in the front burner by the media.
Okay.
Which has gone a long way to showcase that the media has the ability to galvanize the youth in terms of taking actions. So I think lately we had issues bordering around a particular agency. I don't want to mention the name. The media played a huge role in terms of showcasing their ability for them to prove that they can, together with the youth, force government to really take certain actions. And we also had the Not Too Young to Run bill, which we had a very huge media presence, if I may want to put it that way, in terms of trying to push together that policy
and promote it.
Yeah, to promote it. So we actually made a big leap in terms of achieving more with that. So if you want to look at what the media has done historically, I think that ranks the first by my own ranking, as what the media has done over the years to push to galvanize for youth involvement, and then also asking for accountability by government. So that's a clear example of how the media, or what role the media has played in that regard.
All right. So, what specific platforms or channels within the media landscape are most effective in reaching and engaging young audiences in governance issues?
Yeah, I would want to say radio number one. And
okay.
Thankfully today, we're celebrating today's
World Radio Day.
So I want to say, for 100 years plus, we've had the radio. So that's particularly for me number one medium, for us to use to fight or bring about accountability by government, then we can also would want to refer to social media as another platform. In the last couple of years, we've had a really coming of age of social media. So we could use those platforms also to ensure that the youths are actively involved. You'd want to mention in terms of social media, the X app. It's also a tool or a platform where we can use to, bring the youths together, teach them on knowing that it is their right for them to demand for accountability from our government.
Okay, now how can the media actually create awareness and educate the youth on their rights and responsibilities in the context of holding the leaders accountable?
Yeah, I want to say coming up with programs that are youth inclined.
Okay.
Yeah, for information sharing. Yeah, because we are in that age where people really read news on the online.
Okay.
And then they don't really verify this information. But coming from the right platform, from the right news agencies, it could prove to be that these are actually verified information. So that could be a strategy to achieve that. Coming up with programs that the youth would
actually want
relate with such programs, share informations on those platforms. That's a strategy for you to use to get the youths involved in what we're talking about today.
Okay, now, if you're just joining us, this is Catalyzing Youth Action for Accountability in Governance, and this program is proudly sponsored by Nigeria Youth Future Fund, NYFF, and LIB Africa, and this is a Green Light Initiative radio awareness program. And our focus today is on media's role in enhancing accountability in governance, and we still have our resource person right here in the studio in the person of Ubong Anietie. All right, so let's talk about successful examples of youth-led initiatives leveraging media platforms to influence positive change in governance.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier the Not Too Young to Run bill, which even went down to academic institutions. So that kind of pulled everyone, the youths in a particular direction for them to know that their eyes got open to the fact that they can seek to stand elections for electoral positions and all of that. So that's a clear example. Just to answer your question, that Not Too Young to Run bill was for me a very vital position we found ourselves at as youths.
Okay, so you actually made reference to social media and the fact that youth are actually focused on social media and also see fake news on social media. Now, to talk more on that, what do you think are the roles social media and digital platforms play in amplifying youth voices and promoting accountability in governance?
Number one, it plays the role of opening our eyes to the fact that we could be activists for real.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So another role it plays is the fact that it coordinates everybody in a particular direction, because of course when it has to do with young people, that sometimes that ability or inability to agree on certain fronts actually always raises its head against against achieving a common goal. So with social media platforms, there could be that readiness. It actually coordinates the youth to actually agree on a particular issue and then march towards achieving it. So there is that role of coordinating the youth. There's that ability also to showcase the fact that they could all be activists, advocating for their rights on achieving a common goal.
Okay.
So that's the role it plays. That's the role social media plays. That ability to coordinate them, that ability to open their minds to the fact that they could be able to advocate to achieving a common goal. So that's really the role it plays for the youth.
Now, How can traditional media outlets collaborate with youth-led initiatives to bridge the gap between generations and foster a sense of collective responsibility?
I want to say forming collaborations.
Okay, how do they do that?
Yeah, allowing us, the young people, come on programs that are youth inclined. Yeah, carrying us along on your programmings and ensuring that those programs really talk about youth and their activities. And I also want to mention the fact that you could also give the youths free airspace most of the times, to also talk about issues that that bothers them. So collaborations, number one. Then also factoring them into your programs and activities as a radio station, so to speak. So that's how the traditional media can carry the youth along, and by so doing, you'd notice that would achieve a lot in forming the youth, carrying them along, and also sharing information that they would not necessarily have heard somewhere else, because the knowledge gap is very wide. So we need to use all of these strategies to close up that gap. Yeah.
All right. Now, in what ways can the media address challenges that are faced by youth in accessing and understanding information related to governance and accountability?
Okay. Just sharing educational info. Educational information on platforms. Thankfully, so many news agencies are now on various social media platforms.
That's true.
So they could use such platforms to be sharing useful information that the youths can really relate with. So it's just about factoring in the youth into your own programming and sharing this information for them to really learn off.
Okay.
So that's is a little bit complex, but it's not something that we have to really scratch our heads over. It's just about programming your content to be youth inclined, and then sharing this information to the target youth, carrying them along in your activities, and then inviting them also to talk about most of their challenges. That's how there is that inclusion, and then we achieve so many things on that front.
All right. Now, what strategies can the media employ? Because you have started mentioning a few to ensure balanced and unbiased reporting, empowering youths to form informed opinions on governance matters.
These strategies are quite simple.
How simple?
I think I've actually said it earlier.
You have said some, so I feel like you can still add more.
Well, of course, coming up with, I keep repeating it. It's just about content. What content are you putting out? Are your contents really,
unbiased?
Are they really carrying the youth along? Do they address what issues they're trying to, to solve? So it's just about sharing that knowledge, to them on your platforms. I just feel it's just content driven.
Okay. Now, how can the youth actively contribute to shaping the narrative in the media to influence public discourse and policy discussions related to accountability in governance?
Activism, that's how they can influence things.
Okay.
Yeah, because before the last elections, you noticed there was that little bit of not being interested in governance by the youth. There was that apathy.
Yeah.
So, but then with the social media, a lot really happened, and then it actually roused the interest of the youth to want to be part of the electoral process. And how did that come about? It came about because there was much information that was making the rounds, whether verified or not verified. So it opened up our minds to the fact that so that means we really can be part of every electoral process. So I really thank God that that the last elections really opened our eyes to the fact that we can part of this. We shouldn't really stand out and then hope that we can effect
Things
that.
go our way.
That that things will really change. It has to be us, coming close, being part of the process and correcting, because it is only when you're part of that process that you can notice, the ills, and then if you are right and positive minded, you can say, okay, this is how it should be, and then you could, effect those changes. But when you're outside, you would only be crying, and your cries won't really make any change. So it has to come from we the youths determining in our minds to always be part of the process. We keep talking, we keep advocating, lobbying the government to see the need, for them to take certain actions to redress our issues. So we have to be actively involved, and that's why I mentioned being activists. Everybody should try to say something, try to air out their opinions, try to see how we can bring about change to our country, Nigeria. And to achieve that would mean being part of the process all the way down.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Ubong Anietie. Now, what are your final words on the topic of discourse today?
Okay, my final words would go in two directions. First, to the government. Yeah, I want to plead. I want to plead that there should always be that readiness for them to answer two questions bordering on how they are managing our resources. And thankfully, the government these days are rather responsive. Because there were outcries of late, and then the government of Tinubu actually responded to a certain level. We hope that in the coming days, in terms of the economy, which is rather very harsh, that also very soon the government will respond. So we are hoping that as the administration, their policies and everything unfolds, that there would be that readiness for them to always respond to how they are managing our resources, because that's what really makes us to have that relaxed minds that okay, the government are listening, and then they are ready to change, adjust in their policies, which we feel are rather too uptight on us. So I want to see that okay, the government is saying okay, we've heard your cries, we've seen your pleas, this is what we are ready to do. Because sometimes it's not only about listening to us, but what efforts are you putting on grounds to address these issues? So there should be that relationship between us and the government. When we air out our opinions, they should come out and say okay, we've heard, this is the modalities we are putting on ground to address this. But over the years, you'd notice that governments were not always ready to respond to certain issues, and that's where the fault comes in terms of looking at transparency and accountability. When the government is rather shaky to come out and answer to these pressing issues, to these pressing questions.
So there should be more listening from the part of the government.
More listening, more actions.
Okay.
Not just listening, but then telling us what steps you're ready to take to address those issues. That's how we'll be able to tell that you are accountable.
Okay. So it should be more open.
More open.
Okay.
More open. That's what we really are looking out for. Then for the youth too, there should be that readiness, to take part in the processes. We should not be outside and then saying, it's not going to change. That narrative of, oh, it's elections, and then everybody saying, my vote will not count. It should change. It should change. We don't want to see that narration. We don't want to hear those narratives that it's government now. They won't do anything. My voice won't make any effect. I can't make any impact. No, we have to kill that narrative totally by taking part, and then knowing that whatever you're saying, whatever you're doing, whatever actions you want government to take, one day it will make an impact, and those changes will come.
All right. Those changes will come one day. Thank you so much, Ubong Anietie. Thank you so much for being part of the program. All right. If you're just joining us, this has been Catalyzing Youth Action for Accountability in Governance. And this right here is a Green Light Initiative radio awareness program. And it is proudly supported by Nigeria Youth Future Fund, NYFF, and LIP Africa. And today's focus has been on media's role in enhancing accountability in governance. government. And yes, until next week Tuesday, my name is still Benedicta Henshaw. See you same time, same station next week, and don't forget, do not watch the dial. It is still Eagles 102.3 FM Abuja, your radio experience you can count on.